A young nurse was bathing a millionaire in a coma, but when he suddenly woke up, something miraculous happened. Fluorescent lights at Westbridge Private Hospital hummed softly as Anna Monroe walked through the immaculately white corridors. She had worked as a nurse here for almost 2 years, but today it felt different. The moment she received an unexpected call to the office of Dr. Harris, the head of the neurology department, a strange feeling settled in her chest. Did she do something wrong? Is she being transferred? She took a deep breath before knocking on the polished mahogany door. "Come in," came from within. As she stepped inside, she saw Dr. Harris standing by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, his usually keen gaze fixed on the city skyline. His office smelled of sterile antiseptic and expensive leather, and the atmosphere was heavier than usual. "Anna," he said, finally turning to her. His voice was measured and serious. "We have a patient who needs special care, but this job is not for the faint of heart." Anna's brows furrowed. "Not for the faint of heart? What kind of patient?" she asked cautiously. Dr. Harris studied her for a moment before pointing to the thick medical record on his desk. "Grant Carter," he said. Anna held her breath. Grant Carter. The same Grant Carter. Even if she hadn't recognized the name right away, the cover of the folder spoke for itself. A black and white newspaper clipping about a horrific car accident a year ago. The youngest billionaire in the city had a terrible accident. His sports car flew off a bridge in the middle of the night, leaving him in a coma ever since. His name once dominated headlines. Grant Carter, the ruthless, untouchable CEO of Carter Enterprises. A man who built an empire in just 32 years. He was now nothing more than a ghost trapped in his own body. "His family rarely visits him," Dr. Harris continued, "and most medical staff just do their rounds out of duty. But Grant Carter needs someone who is committed, someone who will really care." Anna bit her lip. She heard the hesitation in his voice. "And you think that someone is me?" Dr. Harris nodded. "Yes." Anna sighed slowly. It was a daunting task to take care of someone who might never wake up, about a man whose wealth and power once dictated the lives of thousands of people. But deep down, she knew her answer even before she spoke. "I'll do it." Dr. Harris's lips tightened into a thin line, but there was a glimmer of approval in his eyes. "Good. Your shift starts tonight." The private suite on the top floor of the hospital seemed eerily quiet as Anna stepped inside. Unlike the cold sterility of the other wards, this one was luxuriously decorated. Spacious layouts, muted chandeliers, dark oak furniture, and at the center of it all lay Grant Carter. Her breath stopped as she looked at him. Despite the tubes, the machines that kept him alive, and the immobility of his body, he was handsome. A strong jawline, dark eyelashes on pale skin, broad shoulders visible under a hospital gown. If it were not for the lifeless immobility, he could easily pass for just a sleeping person. But it was no ordinary dream. It was a man locked in endless silence. Anna swallowed hard and stepped closer, adjusting his IV before reaching for the warm cloth prepared for him. She hesitated for only a second before gently pressing it against his skin. The moment she touched it, a strange chill ran down her spine, a sensation she couldn't explain, as if he could feel her presence, as if somewhere in the depths of his unconscious state, he knew. The soft squeak of the heart monitor filled the silence, even and rhythmic. Anna threw away the strange feeling and continued her work, gently wiping his hands, chest, making sure that his body remained clean and well-groomed. "I suppose you don't have a choice, do you?" she muttered, almost to herself. Silence. "I'll take it for a no." A small smile appeared on her lips, no matter what. The days turned into a routine. Every morning and evening, Anna bathed him, changed the sheets, monitored his vital signs. But it soon became more than just medical care. She found herself talking to him, telling him stories about her day, about the world outside his window. "You should have seen the food in the cafeteria, Grant. This is a tragedy. Even for a billionaire, I doubt you'd survive on it." Silence. "I don't even know why I'm talking to you. Maybe I just like the sound of my own voice." Silence. Silence. "Or maybe you're really listening." The heart monitor beeped evenly, as if responding to her. And maybe, just maybe, he was really listening. Anna hummed softly, dipping a clean napkin into the warm water. The sterile silence of Grant's private room had become something she had become accustomed to over the weeks. The steady beep of the heart monitor, the faint hum of the drip, all this was now part of the background. She leaned over the bed, gently wiping Grant's face, her fingers gentle but precise. "You know," she said in a light voice, "I read somewhere that people in a coma can still hear. So, technically, you're the worst listener I've ever met." No answer, of course. She sighed, shaking her head. "It's okay. I'm used to talking to myself." She moved on to cleaning his jawline when she noticed a slight movement. Her breathing stopped. Did she think so? She froze, staring at his hand. No problem. His fingers lay motionless on the snow-white sheets. Anna laughed softly, shaking her head. "Great, now I'm hallucinating. Maybe I'm the one who needs a hospital bed." But the anxiety remained, and over the next few days it recurred. The second time she adjusted his pillow. She wasn't looking when she felt it, the slightest pressure on her wrist. Her head dropped sharply. Grant's hand moved only a fraction of an inch, but enough to make her stomach turn over. "Grant?" she whispered, barely realizing that she had said his name. Silence. The same rhythmic squeak, squeak, squeak of the monitor. She put her hand on him, feeling his warmth, his immobility, his potential movement. No problem. Was she imagining things, or was something changing? Anna couldn't shake this feeling, so she reported it to Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris raised a skeptical eyebrow. "I think so," Anna admitted. "At first I thought it was a fantasy, but it keeps happening." His fingers twitch, his hand shifting slightly. "It's small, but it's there." Dr. Harris leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "We will conduct tests," he finally said. "But don't get your hopes up, Anna. These can be just reflex muscle spasms." Anna nodded, but deep down she didn't believe it. She felt that something was happening, and when the test results came, she was not surprised. "Increased brain activity," Dr. Harris told her. "His neurological reactions are stronger than before." Her heart jumped. "So he's waking up?" Dr. Harris hesitated. "Not necessarily. It can mean anything, but this is a good sign." It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was enough. That... At night, sitting next to his bed, Anna talked to Grant more than usual. "I don't know if you can hear me, but something tells me you can hear me," she whispered. She looked at his face, at his strong features, still motionless. But for the first time it seemed to her that she was not alone in the room. That's why she spoke. She told him about her day, about the patients who annoyed her, about the rude doctor on the third floor who always stole her coffee. She talked about her childhood, about the small town where she grew up, about how she always dreamed of becoming a nurse. And as she spoke, she didn't realize that in the depths of the silence of his coma, Grant was listening. The morning sun filtered in through the large windows of the hospital room, flooding the motionless figure of Grant Carter with warm light. The steady beep of the heart rate monitor filled the silence, steady and rhythmic, as it had been for the past year. Anna stood next to the bed, rolling up her sleeves. It was just another day, another routine bathing routine, another round of talking to someone who might never answer her. She dipped the warm cloth into a basin of water, wrung it out, and began to gently wipe Grant's chest. Her movements were precise and accurate. "You know, Grant," she muttered with a slight smile, "I thought about getting a dog. I need someone who will listen to me and not just lie there all day and ignore me." Silence. She sighed. "Okay, rude. I was just trying to strike up a conversation." She reached for his hand and ran the cloth over his skin. Her fingers touched his wrist, and suddenly his fingers clenched around her hand. Anna froze. A sharp breath caught in her throat. She stared at his hand. The pressure was weak, soft, weak, and indecisive. But it was there. "Oh my God!" Her heart beat wildly. His pulse was buzzing in his ears. She wanted to believe that it was just another reflex or a senseless spasm. But it wasn't. Because then Grant's eyes opened abruptly. For a moment, Anna could not move. She could not breathe or think. She spent months staring at those closed eyelids, looking for any sign of movement or life. And now those deep ocean blue eyes were looking directly at her. They were confused, unfocused, and vulnerable, but alive. Grant's lips quivered. His voice was hoarse and barely audible. "Who? You." Anna stiffened. Her knees almost buckled. His breath was caught between disbelief and panic. He spoke. He woke up. The impossible has just happened. She barely noticed a basin of water slipping from her hands and splashing on the immaculate white floor. She stepped back. Oh my God, her instincts kicked in. She turned around and slammed her hand on the emergency call button on the wall. A loud alarm resounded along the corridor. A few seconds later, the door swung open and a team of doctors and nurses, led by Dr. Harris, burst in. "What's wrong?" demanded Dr. Harris, walking over to the bed and already checking Grant's vital signs. Anna's voice trembled. He grabbed my hand. He opened his eyes. She looked at Grant again, still in disbelief. His chest rose and fell unevenly. His eyes darted around the room as if trying to understand where he was and what was happening. He wasn't fully aware of what was happening yet, but he was there. Dr. Harris's expression changed from shock to action. "Call the neurological team urgently." The nurses began to fuss. The voices overlapped in disbelief as they hurried to test. The room was a whirlwind of movement, but Anna couldn't take her eyes off Grant. Then, as if sensing her gaze, his eyes found her gaze again, and this time he did not avert them. Everything happened so quickly. The doctors asked him questions. The light of the flashlights illuminated his pupils, tested his motor functions. But through all this, Grant's gaze returned to Anna again and again. She stepped forward hesitantly, swallowed hard. "Grant," she whispered, "do you remember anything?" He stared at her, blinking slowly. There was a long pause between them. Then his fingers twitched again. Before she could react, he reached for her hand, a weak, slow but deliberate gesture. His hand closed around hers, a fragile but firm grip, as if he had always known her as the others. She didn't treat him as a charity cause. She didn't see him as a billionaire locked in a hospital bed. She had just seen Grant, and that was why he was drawn to her when she was in the room. The world seemed easier when she spoke. Her voice pulled him out of the darkness that still lurked in his mind, and when she touched him, the hand on his arm, supporting him as he walked, adjusting the pillow, his skin tingled with something he couldn't explain. One evening, after a particularly long therapy session, Anna suggested a walk in the hospital garden. "Fresh air will do you good," she said, smiling. Grant agreed, but he didn't expect how different things would feel outside the hospital. The cool night air, the rustling trees, the moon casting a soft glow on the world. For the first time, he felt like a human again, not a patient, not a mystery with no memories, just yourself. And next to him is Anna. They walked slowly, Anna holding his hand for support. At first, Grant thought it was just part of her job, but then he noticed how her fingers lingered on his wrist, how she looked at him when she thought he couldn't see, how her breathing was slightly interrupted when he got too close. And suddenly he realized that she felt it too, that attraction, that unspoken connection between them. They stopped near a small stone bench, the moonlight casting shadows across the garden. Grant turned to face her, his heartbeat uneven for a different reason this time. Anna opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, Grant took her hand. Her lips parted in surprise, her eyes searching for his gaze. "I don't remember anything about my life before this," he admitted, his voice quiet. "But I know one thing for sure." Anna swallowed. He squeezed her fingers. "I trust you." The words were simple, but they meant everything to him. And judging by the way Anna's breathing stopped, the way her cheeks turned red in the moonlight, the way she didn't pull away, she understood. And so far, this was enough. The night was restless. Grant tossed and turned in his hospital bed, his body still weak but his mind boiling. And then a flash, a sudden burst of memories, burst through his subconscious like a broken dam. The road was dark, the rain was pouring down the windshield, the wipers could hardly cope. Grant gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind still clouded from the meeting he had just left. Something didn't seem right. Then, out of nowhere, bright headlights rushing towards him, a black SUV flew into his lane at full speed. Grant jerked the steering wheel, his tires slid on the wet asphalt. Brakes. They did not work. His heart was pounding as he desperately tried to regain control. And just before the collision, his eyes darted to the side of the road. A dark figure stood there, watching. And then darkness. Grant's eyes opened abruptly. His breathing was short and uneven. His pulse was rapid, and sweat clung to his skin. The memory was so vivid, so real, and now he knew the truth. It wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill him. Anna noticed that something was wrong as soon as she entered his room the next morning. He was different. His usual grin was gone, his body was tense, his hands clenched into fists. "Grant?" she asked cautiously. "What happened?" His piercing blue eyes stared into hers, filled with a new intensity. "I remembered something." Anna's stomach dropped. "An accident?" He nodded curtly. "It wasn't an accident, Anna. Someone ruined my brakes, and there was a man standing on the side of the road just watching my car crash." Anna felt goosebumps run down her spine. Everything she suspected, he had just confirmed. But the question remained: who and why? Anna and Grant spent the next few days digging deeper, going through Grant's files, company records, and anything else that could hint at someone wanting him dead. Then, finally they found it. A financial transfer, a large sum of money transferred just days before the accident. The recipient is a well-known criminal with a history of organizing staged accidents, and the sender is Nathan Carter, Grant's half-brother. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. "It was him," Grant whispered, clutching the edge of the table. Nathan was always jealous, always felt that Grant was the favorite, the one who inherited their father's legacy while he remained in the shadows. And now he tried to erase Grant completely. Anna felt her heart tighten. "Grant, he wanted to kill you." Grant's jaw tightened. "And now I'm going to make sure he pays." That evening, Grant and Anna agreed to meet Nathan face-to-face in a dimly lit office inside the Carter estate. Nathan was lounging in a leather chair, rocking a glass of whiskey, as Grant and Anna walked in. "Well, well," Nathan grinned. "A dead man walks." Grant's eyes burned with rage. "Why did you do that, Nathan?" Nathan took a slow sip of his drink. "You already know why." Anna stepped forward. "You tried to kill your own brother. For what? Money? Authorities?" Nathan's grin vanished. "For the sake of everything that was supposed to be mine," he spat out. "You've always been the golden child, the heir, the one who got everything for nothing. Well, guess what? I'm tired of waiting for my turn." Grant's hands clenched into fists. "So you hired someone to ruin my car." Nathan laughed coldly. "I didn't think you would survive. But hey, miracles happen, right?" Anna felt rage boil inside her, but before she could say anything, the door swung open and two uniformed officers entered. Nathan's face turned pale. "Nathan Carter," one officer announced. "You're under arrest for attempted murder." Nathan turned to Grant, his face contorted in panic. "You set me up!" Grant tilted his head. "No, brother, you set yourself up." Nathan was led away in handcuffs, shouting empty threats. And when the door slammed shut behind him, a heavy silence filled the room. Grant finally exhaled, his shoulders relaxing for the first time since waking up. It's gone. Justice triumphed, and he was finally free. The Carter estate has always been grandiose, imposing, and cold, a fortress of wealth built on generations of power. But tonight, when Anna entered the dimly lit dining room, everything felt different, warmer, more intimate. The soft light of the candles flickered on the elegantly laid table near the large glass windows overlooking the city skyline. The scent of fresh roses filled the air, and a bottle of wine cooled next to two perfectly spaced plates. Anna's breathing stopped. "Grant, what is all this?" she asked, turning to face him. Grant stood behind her, his hands tucked into his pockets, his blue eyes soft but intense. "Dinner," he said simply. "Just you and me." Anna's chest tightened. For the past few weeks, their lives have been a whirlwind, from his recovery to the revelation of the truth about his accident to the arrest of his brother. But now, when the storm is finally over, only this moment remains. And for some reason, it seemed even more terrifying. As they sat down, Anna couldn't ignore the way Grant was looking at her, as if remembering every detail, as if she were something fragile but precious. "You're silent," she said, giving him a small teasing smile. "That doesn't look like you." He exhaled, twisting the glass of wine between his fingers. "I thought." "It's even more dangerous," she joked. He's not laughter. Instead, he leaned forward, his gaze burning through her. "Anna, do you know how many people turned their backs on me while I was in that coma?" She knew. She saw it with her own eyes. How his family treated him as a burden, how his so-called friends moved on. The only reason he survived that darkness was because someone stayed. Because she stayed. "But you're not gone," whispered Grant. "You were there day after day. You took care of me when I couldn't even open my eyes, when for everyone else I was nothing more than a lost cause. You refused to give up." Anna's throat tightened. She had never thought of it that way. She just did what she thought was right. But for Grant, it meant everything. Grant moved closer, his fingers touching her hand on the table. "Anna, I have everything." His voice was soft but firm. "Money, power, influence. But none of that matters without you." Anna held her breath. "Grant, let me finish," he whispered. His hand finally squeezed her, his thumb slowly drawing tender circles on her skin. "I don't know how it happened. I don't know when it started. But I know that every moment I was in that coma, you were the one who kept me alive. You were my light in the darkness, Anna." Her eyes filled with tears. "I love you." These words fell on her, depriving her of breath. Not because she didn't feel it either, but because hearing it from him made it undeniably real. Grant Carter, a man who had once lived in a world of cold calculations, business deals, and games of power, now sat across from her, baring his soul. And for the first time in her life, Anna felt what she had never felt before. She was truly, completely, irrevocably loved. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she smiled through them. "Grant," she whispered, "you have no idea how much it means to me." He held out his hand, gently wiping a tear from her face. "Then let me show you." And when he bent down, pressing his forehead against hers, Anna knew that this was only the beginning. Months have passed since that fateful night when Grant confessed his love for Anna, and in that time, everything has changed. Grant made a full recovery, regaining his strength through endless hours of rehabilitation and training. His body was no longer weak, no longer restrained by the accident that had nearly taken his life. And now he was Grant Carter again, back to the leadership of Carter Enterprises, standing in the boardroom with the confidence of a man who had been in hell and returned and survived. But there was one major difference between the man he was before the accident and the man standing here now. This time he was not alone. This time he had Anna. And soon, if she says yes, she'll be him forever. The roof of the Carter estate was bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, casting warm golden hues on the city skyline. Anna stood on the edge, looking at the breathtaking view, completely unaware of what was about to happen. "It's so beautiful here," she whispered, the wind playing gently with her hair. Grant, standing behind her, smiled. "Not as beautiful as you." She turned to him, rolling her eyes playfully. "Smooth, Carter, very smooth." But her joking expression vanished when she saw him looking at her. There was something different in his eyes today, something deeper, more confident, more endless. Before she could ask, he took a deep breath, then slowly dropped to one knee. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Her hands flew to her mouth as Grant pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal the most stunning engagement ring she had ever seen. An elegant diamond set in a delicate platinum setting. But it wasn't the ring that took her breath. It was him. It was the way his voice trembled slightly as he whispered, "Anna, you didn't just save my life. You have become my life." Her heart was pounding. "Before you, I had everything. Money, power, success. But I was missing something. I missed you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You are the reason I fought to live, the reason I found myself again. And now I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much you mean to me." He picked up the ring, his eyes fixed on hers. "Anne Monroe, will you marry me?" The world froze. Anna could not speak, could not breathe. All she could do was nod furiously, laughter and tears pouring out of her at the same time. "Yes," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "Yes, Grant, 1,000 times, yes." Grant breathed a sigh of relief, placing the ring on her finger before pulling her into his arms, into his world, into eternity. And when their lips met in the fading sunlight, Anna knew that this was where she belonged, always. The Carter estate had never looked more radiant than on their wedding day. The gardens were transformed into a charming wonderland, with white roses lining the paths, twinkling lights twining around the majestic oak trees, and soft music playing in the background as guests gathered in admiration. Anna stood at the main entrance, dressed in an elegant white dress, her heart pounding. "Are you ready?" whispered Lisa, her bride's friend next to her. Anna took a deep breath, her fingers clutching the bouquet. Then she looked up, and there he was. Grant stood at the altar, dressed in a classic black tuxedo, looking at her as if she were the only person in the universe. Her nervousness vanished. She stepped forward, walking down the aisle with absolute confidence. Each step brought her closer to eternity. And when she finally reached him, Grant took her hands in his eyes shining with pure, unfiltered love. The vows were spoken, their promises sealed not only in words, but also in the unbreakable bond they built through every trial, every battle, every moment of unwavering devotion. "I declare you husband and wife." Shouts of joy rang out as Grant wrapped his arms around her face, pressing the sincere, most meaningful kiss to her lips. And as the world rejoiced, Anna realized that this was not the end of their story. That was just the beginning. As the sun began to set, Grant and Anna slipped away from the crowd, walking hand in hand through the gardens, enjoying their new reality. No more hospitals, no more loneliness, no more pain. Only they, together, always. Grant squeezed her hand gently. "You know," he muttered, "I thought I had it all before I met you." Anna smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And now?" He looked at her, his expression soft, devoted, endless. "Now I know that nothing I had before matters, because you're the best thing that ever happened to me." Anna blinked, holding back tears, overwhelmed by the depth of his words. And as they stepped forward into the golden glow of the setting sun, she knew that they had been through storms, darkness, almost mortal trials. But in the end, love won. And with Grant by her side, Anna was finally at home. As Grant and Anna walked hand in hand in their happily ever after, their story became a testament to something truly powerful. Love isn't just about finding someone, it's about standing by their side through every storm. Anna never gave up on Grant, even when the world gave up. And in the end, it was love, not money or power, that really saved him. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heartbreaking Stories for more emotional and inspiring stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that touches your soul. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the most unexpected way. See you in the next story.